Welcome to Above the Garage.
Hi, friends. Welcome to our analysis of Season 3, Episode 7 of The Handmaid's Tale, which is entitled Under His Eye. Let's do our round of introductions and dive in.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Hi, I'm Violet.
And I'm Kate. So June's back home now, and the episode opens with a shot of ropes and the handmaids walking out to them. Lydia yells places, and the handmaids respond by his hand. As she yells heave, they pull, and we don't really know what's going on, or I didn't, and neither do they, it seems, until two Econo people and a man in muzzles are pushed out, and we see the three nooses. I guess they saw the nooses first, but they still seem like a little shocked at the whole scene. I don't know if this is a new method of particution. Lydia gives them a ridiculous pep talk and then blows her whistle, and the platform drops out and they hang. And June leaves really quickly, telling off Matthew, let's go. Matthew said, I hear the woman mistreated her child, let her cry for hours and hours. Great reason to hang someone, June replies. And then Matthew says, his winnowing fork is merciful and necessary, clearing away the rotted chaff so the good can take root. But she trails off and June sees there's something wrong. And she helps her breathe through it. They have a moment for once. And Matthew admits that she's always loved being pregnant, but this time is difficult. And June asked if she told the doctor, and she said that the doctor said everything is normal, much like he did when she was about to die. But June tries to bond with her and says she's a hard time at first with Nicole's pregnancy, and she had some thoughts she wasn't proud of. And then Matthew rejects the offer of bonding quite strongly, saying she'd never have such thoughts. She's horrified by June saying that.
I kind of thought that maybe her reaction was because she always feels like she's under surveillance. So she doesn't trust anyone.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think she is pious, but I think a lot of it comes from that
fear.
She's being watched. Yeah. Like she's one of Lydia's little spies. So if she doesn't toe the line, she kind of looks she's a little too pious, but also looks scared when she started talking naturally and pulled herself back. So
she couldn't let herself.
Right.
I had the same thought, especially because it seemed like they were sort of connecting over her, the pain, the cramp or whatever that she was having. And then as soon as it turned to something that Gilead could see as sin, you know what I'm saying? Before that, it was kind of just them having a conversation. And then as soon as June says, I would be ashamed to admit the thoughts I had, then it's okay, well, now that's something that Gilead could use against us.
Right.
So she stops being open with her then.
Yeah, and she may be close to feeling that thought, but trying not to let herself also. So she's
right.
hyper reactive to.
True.
Mm-hmm. Can't give in to thinking like that.
Right. Especially close to home because she does feel that way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting too at the beginning where Gilead is so concerned about aesthetics that they even made the rope red.
That's a good point
for the handmaids to pull on.
Yeah,
matchy.
They just really care about the way everything looks.
They do.
And another thing was that they had three nooses, three people they hung, and then three ropes for the handmaids. So the Holy Trinity, I guess.
Yeah. Something, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of triangles in this episode versus normally we're seeing circles. At the grocery store, we see a woman with the mouth thing from DC, which we learn is called a veil. And they say that they're popping up everywhere. All the rage. Matthew obnoxiously says we should salute their devotion. Very Aunt Lydia-esque. She's trained well. And then Alma tells June they finally got a shipment of her favorite fruit cocktail she loves. And Matthew gets excited, but Brianna draws her away to help her pick an avocado so that June can talk to Hannah's Martha after she makes fun of Alma's fruit cocktail line. And Alma says that she's crappy at improv. I just really love Alma.
I know.
Everything she says.
Her banter. Yeah.
Yeah. None of it ever buys into the Gilead-esque talk. Yeah. It's all old school slang we were talking about. And I enjoy it immensely. But Alma tells her to make it quick with Frances, Hannah's Martha. And they do an interesting little leapfrog through the refrigerator aisle, I think is funny. Open one door and she opens the next.
Which doesn't look suspicious at all.
I know.
Exactly.
That was the note that I had. I had that note going, okay, this actually makes it look
worse.
Stayed at one door. Yeah. So much worse. Yeah. So the Martha said, Mrs. McKinsey asked you to stop, as if that would matter. And June says, I can't, could you? And Hannah's Martha's listen, Agnes couldn't be happier. She's doing great at school. And June points out that the same school would cut her finger off for reading and says Lawrence can get them all out. And she hasn't talked to Lawrence yet about getting them all out, right? She's just got this grand plan in her head that she's sure she can pull off without any actual details about the plan.
I think she just knows that he's gotten people out before and is just gonna,
make it happen.
She's gonna make it happen. She's gonna force him to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and she does that. She gets people to do what she wants. So, and then Martha says it'd be selfish to put a child in that danger. And June's like, listen, I just came from my 4th hanging this week. Do you think that's gonna get any better? And then Martha totally changes her tune and tells her about a friendly guardian at the school who will help her see Hannah if she goes today. I do think that was a very bad decision on the Martha's part for everyone involved. Like,
yes,
I think we've said before, at this point, just going to see her is not worth it. Like it only causes trouble. It causes trauma for her. If you have no plan, like just leave it alone until you have a plan.
And June can get herself or someone else killed, and the price, or she won't get Hannah out.
Right.
Despite somebody else getting killed.
Maybe get to look at her.
Yeah.
Right.
And somebody is killed for that. So that's totally ridiculous and selfish.
It's so selfish.
That part.
I dislike.
Yeah, she's just not thinking clearly. She's thinking just of what she wants to do, not the big picture.
Right.
And I can see June, that kind of fits with June, but I do think that it's a strange decision for the Martha to make.
Right.
I think probably the Martha, the idea of getting out and thinking that would be able to happen for them.
Just excited.
Maybe made her make not great decisions right there, because she was like, well, if I help June now, then she'll help me get out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, I think
she'll include me. Yeah.
Right. I also kept thinking the whole time, like, I don't know why, but the refrigerator with the light, and like usually they put the food from behind those things, right? Like in markets.
Yeah.
So I kept thinking, like, somebody can hear you guys. Like they're gonna.
Yeah, there's people back there.
Somebody's like in the stock room, or like they have, I don't know. Just seemed like the worst place to have a conversation like that.
Right. And then you see a not irrelevant shot of Matthew watching them, noticing who June's talking to. Then we're with the Swiss in Canada, and they're now grilling Emily about her criminal activity. And it's funny to me that Sylvia's right there listening to all of her very detailed graphic crimes against people in Gilead. But Sylvia is totally defending her, and Emily's like telling Sylvia to stop. Let me just vividly detail everything I've done. And I enjoy also that the interview ends with, Dr. Malik, did you take any other actions that Gilead would see as criminal? And after a long pause, she says, probably, yeah.
The list is long of things that Gilead would think is criminal.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
Definitely left out a few details, didn't she?
Yeah, but I'm proud of her. And when they're leaving, Sylvia tells her she doesn't care what she did there, and she doesn't have to deal with this on her own. But Emily shuts down and insists she's fine, clearly like closing her out and leaving.
I just really like Syl and Emily's post-Gilead relationship. I just feel like Syl is very like, she's showing her that she's there for her, but she's giving her space, and it's just really nice. And like, I feel bad for them both, because I feel bad for Syl, but she's not making it about her at all. It's very sweet, I think.
Yeah. Then we're with Mrs. Winslow and Serena, and Mrs. Winslow is showing her a home available in DC, trying to talk her into moving there. But inside, it's actually like really sad, because it's like Chernobyl or something, where everything's clearly just abruptly left in the middle of a life happening. And the paper on the table says terror in Washington. There are kids' shoes and hockey sticks. There was a family here when they were taken. And it looks like someone was even like drinking a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And Serena asks who lived here before. And when Mrs. Winslow dismissively says they were Baptists, as if they didn't matter, the way she said it too.
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
Who cares that they're gone?
I don't know what their crime
killed.
was, but yeah, they deserve to die. So they were apparently killed for their religion. I am rethinking the baptism thing, by the way. Since people were killed for being Catholic, maybe June would honor her father's religion with a holly baptism. I don't know. Maybe. But I digress. Winslow shows her the nursery. A baby named Phoebe used to live there. And there are bunk beds down the hall. So I wonder what happened to the older kids. I assume the baby was given to some evil bitch, but I wonder what happened to the teenagers.
Probably married off to commanders if they're a girl.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
made into guardians. Yeah.
The scene made me think of how abruptly everything was left to in the Boston Globe.
Yeah.
You know, like how their shoes were there. Everything was just left. And
it's striking when you see that.
Yeah, it was.
Life just left suddenly.
Yeah, unrestored is what they said the house was. And
They didn't
clean up after they kidnapped them and did God knows what to them. Reminded me of the Boston Globe, all their stuff out and sad. Just haunting, kind of.
Yeah, haunting is the perfect word for it. It's such like a horrific, like just watching these wives walk through and be so uncaring and just only thinking about like, oh, isn't this house beautiful? And we can like have a family here. And it's like they're walking through like a ghost of this family
a family destroyed, ripped apart, killed. We don't know what happened to them. I mean, I don't know. Were they sinners? Is the mom now a handmaid? Did they kill the husband or the kids? It's terrible to think. And they just are like, oh, it's next to the master. You can hear the baby. And it's like, gosh, how?
Yeah, like a real estate agent.
I would just feel sick.
Yeah.
I would feel sick seeing their pictures and all their baby toys, thinking, what happened to you?
It's effective.
I mean, it's total detachment where they have to not even think of these people as human beings. Like they're just thinking of them as, you know what I'm saying? Like they can't relate to these people as real people and still carry on that way. So it's just awful.
It's horrifying.
It's upsetting that they can do that so easily,
Right.
So what do we think Serena's thinking here, aside from that she's probably thinking about Holly when she's in Phoebe's room?
Yeah, I felt like for a moment she kind of had, like, I wondered if she was feeling something there. Like, we've kind of said this before, but like fighting a feeling. Like, she's kind of like, I don't know, maybe I feel a little bit bad about this. No, I'm just going to think about myself and the baby that I could have.
She did ask. At least she asked.
Yeah. She did ask, so she wondered.
She did ask who they were, so she acknowledged that there were people there, which Mrs. Winslow was not interested in. But I don't know. She's having such a good, like, happy experience in DC with Winslow's, happy, full of joy children, and Fred and she are doing some weird thing where they like each other again. So I don't know. What do you think, Sarah? What do you think she was thinking?
Oh, yeah, I thought for a moment, like Violet said, that she was maybe having some, not necessarily like regrets, but maybe she was feeling some sort of empathy. But when they got to the baby's room, then I think her thoughts turned to her own pain, so to speak, and that she's apart from her daughter.
Right. Yes. She's
how much she wants to build this new life with her and Fred.
Yeah.
Some sort of humane thoughts at first, but then she went back to being selfish again.
Right.
Yeah. The house is very bright and cheery, aside of the obvious depression of all the stuff that's been left suddenly. And Phoebe's name even means light. So I don't know. It's very much the opposite of their house that they used to have, which was very depressing and dark. So I'm sure that was on purpose.
I think maybe Serena's still in this like phase of she's mostly given up on her end of season 2 thoughts of wanting Nicole to be in Canada and be safe. But I think like there's probably still a little bit of like tug of war going on, like very small amount of it inside her at this point, where she probably deep down knows that it's better for Nicole not to come back, even though she's like ignoring that and pushing for it. We're watching that like slowly 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of thing in her mind, like over the last few episodes. And then, so I guess I'm kind of wondering if that's maybe the seeds that we're seeing there is like her having these like really deep down thoughts of like, am I doing the right thing? Yes, I am. Don't worry about it. Don't think about that.
Yeah.
Right. When she sees this house and what she can have, then she probably puts that behind her and goes into her typical self-centered mode. And she's like, I want this for me. I want this nursery.
Right.
I want this wine and dine lifestyle in DC where I hobnob with my friends,
Yeah. And the Winslows are like manipulating it right out of her kind of by showing her all these things that she could have.
Right. And then we're with Fred and Commander Winslow, and he says Canada's talking about extraditing Nicole, and Fred praises Winslow for his help. And Winslow says they make a good team. And then Fred says something about once Nicole is home, and then Winslow tells him that Nicole being in Canada provides so much leverage. So he wants him to keep her there. And he tells Fred to think about it and all the credit he'd get from Gilead. So they're both manipulating the Waterfords pretty well.
The entire dynamic between Commander Winslow and Fred.
Yeah.
That he keeps touching Fred all the time. Yes. And like, I understand that he's flattering him. Yes, he's manipulating him, but is there something else there with his touchy feely? Yeah.
They're like 1 inch away from each other's faces in the scene too. Like Winslow like gets right up there. Their noses are almost touching.
We make a good team. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's all
Yeah. Like way closer than, for example, Fred and Warren.
right. There's no love there.
Yeah.
So, all right. Then June is at Lauren's house and she's so happy. It's kind of cute. She starts talking to Beth and she tells Beth that she has to get to Brookline by 3:00 to see her daughter. And Beth is happy for her, but won't go with her. Not with all those guardians out there, which is a little bit bitchy, in my opinion, even though, no, this is a terrible plan. She should talk her out of the plan entirely, as opposed to just saying, I'm not going to go with you. And then it is going to much further endanger the household by making her take Eleanor. And then June goes up to Eleanor's room, which is super sad and dark. And June opens the curtains and tempts her with going on a walk. And she resists, but June generally gets what she wants. She talks her into it and tells her to go get her coat.
I did notice when Mrs. Lawrence's tray, when June's carrying it into the room, that there were pills on there. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Or maybe they just like vitamins.
Maybe like herbal or something.
I don't know. It looked like red and white little gel cap things. But yeah, she's taking something. So that was interesting because I had for some reason thought that she wasn't able to get access to any medication. But there's something that she's taking for some reason.
Interesting.
Also, the chocolate cake on that tray looked real good.
Yeah, I did. I saw that.
Yeah, I want Beth's chocolate cake.
I thought it just seemed so sad that she was like a shut-in. You know what I mean? Like even opening the window was like, oh, what's out there? I mean, she shocked been so shut in. So I'm trying to wonder.
What is she doing there with all the dark? I don't understand.
Or obviously she's not allowed to go out. Maybe that's a house rule, or is it intentional? Does she not want to go out? Is she like an agoraphobic? Does she want to stay home? Is she afraid to see people? So I don't know why, but it seemed like she was just in a dark room.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Lawrence would definitely dissuade her. I don't know.
Right.
He wants his best for her, but he doesn't want her to be exposed to Gilead and then see that she has, mental
right.
People will talk about her and
she tends to just kind of say things and not think about it. So I think he would be afraid that she would say something that would incriminate them and not not mean anything by it, but she would just say the wrong thing.
She's like a prisoner of herself and of her own, like just a prisoner of her mental illness. Sad.
But at the same time, I think that at least based on this episode and the one before where she helped June with the dead Martha, I think that Lawrence doesn't really give his wife enough credit. She's such a smart woman. Like despite the illness she has, she is able to function. She understands what's going on. Right. So I think that at times he treats her like she's a child rather than his wife and a functional adult. She may not be fully functional, but she's still functional enough to deserve something a bit better than what he gives her.
Right. Yeah. She can at least walk throughout the house and talk to the Martha. I mean, you know what I mean? Like maybe not let her go out, but be in the yard and have some type of, I don't know, life outside of that room.
Yeah, exactly. Like interact with a few other people at least.
I hate how June manipulates her in this scene. Like it just makes me so sad because she's just manipulating what's best for June. It just makes me especially sad in this scene because Mrs. Lawrence is so sweet and like, I don't know, using her mental illness against her basically.
Yeah, she's easy to manipulate.
But my note was that June's becoming the kind of person that I would probably not want to be involved with. But later on in the episode, I'm really glad that she sort of seems to realize herself that what she did was pretty awful. So she starts seeing in herself that maybe she's not acting the way she should be.
Right.
I think hurting someone like Eleanor kind of that's a step too far for her because she sees that Eleanor really does care and feels bad about
person.
it. Yeah.
Right. This is the episode where she has like a shot in the window afterwards. It's kind of like mom bossy. So then when they're walking outside, they run into Naomi Putnam first, who is delighted to see Eleanor out in public for the first time in ages. And Eleanor's excited to see Charlotte and hilariously opens with, "We thought you were going to die," which she repeats like a lot during this conversation.
Oh, the poor soul.
She's not brushed off her small talk skills in a while, it seems. And then Naomi tells Eleanor she'll have a baby soon with such a ripe handmaid. And then Eleanor's closing line with the baby is, I'm so glad, or no, about the baby was, I'm so glad she didn't die. But June gets them to move on, and on a bridge they're walking across, Eleanor's struggling. And when June asks, she says it's hard not to imagine what my daughter or son would have looked like. She asks, like, you guys tried to have children? I didn't know that. And Eleanor clarifies that she wanted to, but Lawrence didn't. She was teaching full time, but it sounds like the real problem was her mental health. They were always trying to adjust her dosage to get it right. Mm-hmm. And June points out that being a mother in Gilead would pose its own challenges. So Eleanor says, maybe we did the right thing. And then June has this moment of like, I got to tell her the truth. And she tells her, I lied to you. This is what we're actually going. I want to see my daughter. Today may be my only chance, but I'll take you home if you want. And Eleanor thinks for a moment, but then she's like totally excited at the prospect, maybe of doing something good in Gilead for once, or she says she thinks she's keen on adventure. So
right, she thought it was a little adventure.
Excitement. Yeah. Her life is pretty boring.
I think it's interesting because I'm like glad that June told her the truth there, but I still think the moment was manipulative because she had just seen the baby, like Eleanor had just seen the baby and like was talking about children, and it was like the perfect moment to like talk her into it. Mm-hmm. So, but I do think like June was genuinely feeling connected to her and wanted to be truthful, but it also worked to her advantage, to June's advantage that Eleanor was in that moment really receptive to the children, and the idea of like June wanting to see her child would have been, she could share that empathy with June of wanting to see her child,
Yeah. Then Maura and Emily are in a coffee shop, and Maura's pissed Canada won't grow a pair and tell Gilead to fuck off. Emily says, it's difficult. She asks Maura if she misses her old job, and Maura gets excited at the prospect of learning more about pre-Gilead history, especially dating, and says she wasn't into clubbing. She just studied all the time. And then Maura's like, oh, you went to Harvard. I know Harvard girls. And she starts naming them and keeps striking out. And then Emily makes what has to be a joke that Maura completely misses and says she dated a firefighter from Boston named Pina Delvaggio. Pina Delvaggio? No way that's her name. But it completely goes over Maura's head, and Emily has like a chuckle to herself, which I enjoy. And Maura just keeps saying, I can't believe we don't have any gay in common. And then Emily says she met Syl, and that was it. Finally, something they can bond over. And Maura says, yeah, I get that. Mm-hmm. And then Maura is suddenly leaving because she wants to harass the Canadian Minister of Border Security. Bird dog is the term she uses, which she says means protesting right up in their faces. And after thinking about it for a moment, Emily asks if she can come. So then next, Maura is indeed up in his face, not letting up. Why are the Swiss here? Why won't you refuse Gilead custody of baby Nicole? And when the Canadian minister responds that the birth mother already gave up her rights, which infuriated me, it also infuriated Emily. And
same here. Yeah.
And Emily gets in the middle and she says she didn't surrender anything. June gave Nicole to me. She wanted her out of that sick, twisted place. I risked my life to get her out. I did my part. Now you do yours. And security's grabbing them and she's cursing at them. And that scene, and that just made me so mad when she said the birth mother gave up the rights. Like,
just a straight up lie.
Like she had a choice. She had no choice. She was forced to.
It was so insane that he could even say those words, like knowing how far from the truth that is. Nobody thinks that that's the truth. So it's just like so offensive for him to say that instead of.
Why does he say that? I mean, I know with the Swiss, but she wasn't relinquishing her right. She wanted her to stay in Canada. She wasn't giving her up. She just is not going to bring her back with her. She wouldn't be with her anyway. So it's not like she was relinquishing it. She didn't have rights to her anyway.
Right.
I think it's a political spin.
But it was 100% Gilead line.
Right. But it's terrible to say. Right. Yeah. It's a terrible thing for him to say. She had no choice in the matter. And she wants her daughter to stay in Canada with her husband, Luke.
Yeah. No, like he should say something to the effect of, it's complicated. It's not as easy as you think, blah, 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 whatever. Some line that makes sense for Canada, not a Gilead line that is, she relinquished her rights to her baby.
Yeah, it's her fault.
Fucking kidnapped, raped, and her baby stolen from her. Like, fuck off.
Oh, made me so mad.
Sentence, I would have punched him too.
I love that like gets Emily riled though, like that she goes, she runs up and
Well, think of her. She risked her life. She nearly died and they're like, oh, we're just going to take her back. Terrible.
Then June and Eleanor are approaching Hannah's school, which is not exactly the way schools look here, not yet anyway. Guardian snipers on the roof, helicopters hovering. I don't know how June doesn't see this is a terrible idea at this point, but obviously moms will do crazy things to see their kids. And when they ask for the guardian, Hannah's Martha told June is friendly. They say he's not there. And while they do let Eleanor in, they close the gate on June. And I can't imagine they'd ever let any handmaid into the school, since most handmaids have pretty much had their previous children, pre-Gilead children, taken away and are probably in schools like this because they're fertile. And especially after Holly escaped, like there's just absolutely no reason to let a handmaid into a school.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like that'd just be a hard rule that would never be broken. But June runs around the perimeter until she hears a girl's voice, and she starts saying Hannah and running, following it. And she sinks to her knees, remembering Hannah's giggles as the girl inside giggles. And then a guardian comes and snaps her out of it and gets her. And when she gets back, Eleanor's completely losing her shit, and she says, "You left me," which June promised not to do when she walked her into going for the walk. And June tells the guardians that she's confused, she has health issues, takes one last look at the school, and then takes her home. My note was, man, Lawrence is going to be furious. Plus, I don't think she should have explicitly told them that she has health issues. Like, you don't have to actually say that to anyone in Gilead.
That whole scene reminded me of season 2, episode 12, when she got back into the Waterford house when Nicole was born, and how she was hearing her through the floorboards and trying to be close.
Yeah.
It reminded me of.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much like that.
So how she was leaning against to hear Hannah and just like soaking up what she thought was Hannah. I mean, that's Hannah. She heard her laughing or thought it. So I immediately went to that scene where I'm like, oh, that's so sad. Her desperation just to like be close, but she can't see them, touch them.
It's fucking heartbreaking.
What a horrible torture. Broke my heart.
I had the same word in my notes, desperation. And I started thinking that her relationship with Hannah is another casualty of Gilead. And kind of like her relationship with Luke, it can never be the same.
Yeah.
She cannot have that relationship back. And I think at this point, she really doesn't understand that. And it's really hard for June. And maybe she's slowly starting to realize that she may not have what she had with Luke back, but with Hannah, it's far more difficult for her to understand, of course, because it's her bond as a mother to her child, but it's definitely something that she's going to have to deal with eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think she feels obviously that the relationship would be back to where it was. It's just that she's in such a place that is going to, it's like hell. So her goal, I think, is just to get her out. I mean, that would be mine. I'd be just desperate to get her out. Like, oh my gosh, she's, going to start puberty in a few years. She knows what's coming. I just think she's so blindsided by that, which you would be. You would be in a panic state trying to get your kid out if you could.
Not thinking about what would come after, just
because she just knows her daughter is probably going to be like, 13, 14, married off, having to have kids as a teenager. I mean, that's a horror story.
But again,
it's
like,
blindsided
I feel like this
by
is
that.
Selfish.
It is.
She's blinded, but this like trying to see her is
blinded by it.
Stupid.
Did you guys notice that Mrs. Lawrence called June outside the school, but then as soon as they were back in the room, she said of Joseph.
The opposite of
what makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know why she called her off Joseph at all. That was more like confusing to me. Calling her June was stupid, but
she says things without thinking through the consequences of it. Yeah,
because her mind works differently.
And I think she doesn't seem like somebody that would ever use the of Joseph
ever. That's what I thought was odd.
Emily too. Yeah. She was like, "What's your real name?" Yeah.
Right.
And then when they're back at the house, Lawrence is helping Eleanor in her room. He's darkening it again, telling her to rest, and she sees June outside the door and apologizes, saying she tried and super sad, and strangely calling her off Joseph.
She's mad at her or something.
I think she feels guilt. I think she feels bad at this point, even though she should be mad at her, really. But when Lawrence comes out, June tells him she had no intention of putting her in danger. And then she turns and angrily tells him, "You should have seen her out there. She came alive." So I'm really surprised at the dynamic here. I expected him to be absolutely like lighting into her for endangering his wife. And instead, she's challenging him. And like she really endangered Eleanor and the whole house in what she did. And I'm very surprised that he's now like absolutely livid with her. And instead, she's turned it and said like something nasty to him or challenging or whatever.
Yeah.
Lawrence constantly has unexpected reactions to things.
True. It's true. He likes to keep me guessing. So well done, sir. I did not expect that reaction. Yeah. And then Serena arrives at dinner with Fred, and they're seated at a table for like 12 for some reason. Did you guys notice that? The table's huge, maybe even like 16. It was crazy.
Which also made it weirder that she sits right next to him.
Yes. Yeah, like cuddles up, but it was really good. And they're being real flirty. DC has clearly been good for them, unfortunately. And they reminisce about the last time they were at the art museum together. She says she knows we're going to have a home of our own again one day, and he agrees, all of us. Then Fred tells her they're going to get Nicole back, and I'm confused here if he's lying to her or planning on not listening to Winslow. I assume he's lying to her, because she even says, I was beginning to think it was more politically expedient to keep her in Canada, which is what Winslow was telling him. What do you guys think? What's happening here? Is he going to get her back, or?
I think he honestly wants Nicole back because it would make Serena more bearable for him. You know what I mean? Because she's gone completely off her rocker over this. So I think he honestly would prefer to have Nicole back just to have his own space and not have to deal with Serena's emotions over it.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's still really control, right? Because I think that Fred being able to like make this happen for her, or kind of holding it over her that he can do this for her, is as a control method as well. Like he's still in control of the situation as long as he has this thing he can give to her. It's like the same thing that he does with June, where he like gives her these little like treats in quotes or whatever. Like, I'm giving you a little thing, and now I'm able to control you because I gave you something. Like I think it's the same thing with Serena.
Right, he's stringing her along. He'll play both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also love the line, "I'm good at my job," is what happened. That's what he says. She's like,
he always has to give himself that pat on the back because nobody else is going to.
Yeah. I think he doesn't know what direction it's going to go. He's just playing both sides, like you said.
Yeah.
Like, pretending for both.
It's a game with Serena at this point.
Right.
He's playing.
Then June and Moira in jail for having been violent with the security, I guess. And they're trying to decide how Luke and Sylvia are going to take it. Moira is not sure if Luke will be cool or not, but they start talking about their crimes in Gilead. Better bonding than the coffee shop, which wasn't really working as well, but they have a lot more to bond over in violence in Gilead. And Emily says, look what they've turned us into. And then Moira asks, have you killed anyone since you got out? And Emily says, no. And Moira says, so I think we're good, which is good reasoning. Gilead is a different world. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that they kind of were struggling to bond in the coffee shop, and then in the jail it comes a lot easier.
We can see very clearly, even from their flashbacks, that Moira and Emily were two very different people, despite them being technically both part of the LGBTQ scene in some ways, but their lives were so different pre-Gilead that you have to wonder if they would have been friends if they'd even met before Gilead.
I don't know if they would.
So they may not have even become friends because they're so different in their entire lives and entire lifestyles were so different.
Right. Yeah, Emily is probably, I don't know, seems like maybe she's changed the most. I don't know that June and Emily might have been friends pre-Gilead, but I don't know. It's a good point. Then Fred and Serena are at a gala in DC, and Winslow immediately separates them, sends Serena to the wives, who seem very different than Boston wives. They're like checking out the Guardians.
They're sinful with their lust.
Yeah. That kind of conversation doesn't really happen in the Putnam world.
No.
I love seeing the different cities of, Gilead. I do enjoy that.
It seems like the elite class in DC gets away with a lot more.
But they're also like more evil because they have muted the fucking handmaids. Like,
but they get away with doing whatever they want more than the wives too. They kind of they're like, we rule the world type of mentality.
Yeah. And then Fred and Serena tango. I get it. Fred and Serena are really liking each other again, which is really nice improvement from her living in her mom's and wanting to divorce him somehow, even though that doesn't exist in Gilead. But as far as the tango goes, what do you guys think is the point of this scene?
Just to show them reconnecting, right? I just get so cringy. Like when they get close to each other, it just is like a visceral reaction for me.
Yeah. Winslow looked annoyed. And maybe the other commanders. I don't know. I don't think that husband and wives are maybe supposed to be so.
Oh, perhaps.
Close
and lovey.
And obviously Winslow has other intentions.
Scarlett did some research on what a tango means, or the symbolism, I guess. And it just says Man and woman dance in an aggressive, submissive manner, performing steps and stops while locked in a tight embrace. The symbolic nature of the tango can be interpreted in several ways. The struggle of the man to gain dominance over the woman and the struggle of the oppressor against the oppressed. The tango has been called a dance of sorrow. It represents frustrated love and human fatality. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, very.
So after the tango, we are back in Boston, and the episode is where it started, preparing for a hanging, we know now. And it's horrifying for everyone. I mean, Lydia gives us a little clue. She says that they're being punished for the worst crime, endangering a child. And then we see a whole household being marched out, and the focus is on Frances, Hannah's Martha, who is about to hang for telling June she could go to the school and see Hannah. And it's really fucking sad. I was so sad. I was so upset during the scene the first time. Also, this time, I did know it was coming this time, but it's just so horrifying. And June at first, you know, kind of refuses to grab the rope, and Lydia tells her that nobody can be excused from their duty to God or some shit. And she grabs the rope and pulls. And thus ends the life of Hannah's, the person that probably cared about Hannah the most.
Yeah.
And Hannah probably cared about the most.
Yeah.
So she's really, really, really fucked up her daughter's life now.
And what do you think of June's reaction when she was pulling? When she was looking at Frances as she was pulling, it was just, it bothered me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that at that point she can't get out of doing it. She can't like not do it, but she's so angry because then in the next scene when she attacks of Matthew, like I think it's just that she's turning her feelings back towards anger again, like she's been doing this season.
I did the inside the episode with Elizabeth Moss, and she said it was like her reaction was because she thought it was Frances's fault that Hannah's family had to get up and move, and she takes it out on, and she takes it out on her, which was a catalyst for June to really start to lose her mind a bit, to adapt to ruthlessness. She starts to become a new June. So yeah, so when she's looking, she's angry. She's like,
she does look angry.
You messed it up for me. Now Hannah's gone. And she was like taking it out on her. Yeah. So go to the behind the scenes for that episode on Hulu.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's just like, that's why I'm like, oh,
that's very unexpected to me.
Me too.
So she's thinking Frances is the one who talked to the Mackenzies
that messed something up.
Or something about her. And
yes.
And that's why they moved.
Right. And so, and then right before that, Alma tells her like, something happened to the Mackenzies. They up and had to move. And then she sees Frances. So apparently that's what she says. She thinks it's Frances's fault that Hannah had to move, and she's taking it out on her. And she's, you know, starting to be like, just F it. Just fuck it. Like, I'm just gonna, anybody who gets in my way of Hannah.
That's so crazy.
I know.
She's the one that went to the school. She's the one, and Frances is being killed because of it. So clearly she didn't turn them in.
Because I always was like, why does she look so mad at her? Like at first I thought it was like what you guys were saying, like she's just done. She's so tired of doing this. You know, she's just had it. But it was because apparently she was taking it out on her. And I'm like, oh.
She should have looked sad and apologetic, but.
And I felt so bad for Frances to look at June just giving her that scowl as she was dying. I was like, you know, I wanted June so much to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, or mouth
exactly apologetic look, right?
Or
then you can focus on anger, but like something, that woman's about to die and she's looking at you.
So I just went into that scene because it bothered me, and I'm like, oh,
wow, that I'm glad you did, because I would never have guessed that was the motivation for that look.
Poor Guardian Parker was up there too, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, and the handmaid.
So was that the Mackenzie handmaid?
Might have been.
I assume it was the household minus the commander and his wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Man, Gilead's so fucked up. But so is June now.
Yep, new June.
And then as they're walking away, off Matthew says, you should be grateful your temptation has been removed now. And June's like, what did you do? And loses her shit and tries to kill off Matthew. And I like how the handmaids like kind of form a line in front of her, like protecting her. I mean, some of them are trying to pull her off, and the others are like trying to block anybody from seeing what's going on, which is somehow effective. I think everybody would see what was going on. But she understands now that it was F. Matthew that turned her in, and she said, Lydia told me to protect you. I'm protecting you. And it's very infuriating. I wanted to kill her too.
Yeah, I mean, I think she says Lydia told me to watch you. So she's been threatened with that, I guess. Like
spying on her.
Yeah.
So then they play Every Single Night by Fiona Apple, which is like an upbeat sound after like all this seriousness. Every single night I endure the flight of little wings of white flame butterflies in my brain. These ideas of mine percolate the mind, trickle down the spine, swarm the belly, swelling to a blaze. That's where the pain comes in, like a second skeleton. Trying to fit beneath the skin, I can't fit the feelings in. Every single night's a light with my brain. What did I say to her? Why did I say to her? What does she think of me? That I'm not what I ought to be, that I'm not what I try not to be. It's got to be somebody else's fault. I can't get caught. If what I am is what I am because I does what I does, then brother get back because my breast's gonna bust open. The rib is in the shell and the heart is the yolk. I just made a meal for us both to choke on. Every single night's a fight within my brain.
Oh wow, that's a good fitting song. They always pick songs so well.
Yeah, that seems all pretty relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Maggie Phillips is the music supervisor, and I don't think she could do her job any better. I love the music in this show, as well as Adam Taylor, of course, his original music. All right, I think that's a wrap on our spoiler-free analysis of this episode. So if you're a new watcher, you probably want to go now so you don't hear any spoilers while we talk about our deep dive thoughts of the episode in the context of the show to date, which is through season 4. Okay, you guys have any deep dive notes?
I have one for the finale, which I know you guys all know what I'm about to say.
Get there already. Yes.
Yeah. The whistle, the Aunt Lydia's whistle that she blows for them to do the participation. And then obviously June blowing the whistle in the finale to bring the handmaids out to kill Fred.
Oh, yeah. I like to think like, did June like go to like Dick's or something in Canada that day? I don't know. For some reason, I like to think about the practical logistics of her arranging that. Yeah. Got it. Got to get a whistle. Got to borrow Luke's car. Yeah, because she's got to like rope and shit too. They're gonna hang him. So yeah, no, she had a lot to do that day. Also, I actually thought you were going a different direction with that. My note on that was when Moira asks Emily, "Well, you haven't killed anyone since you got out, right?" And she says no, and that is no longer true.
Not yet.
Moira can still hang on to that, but Emily's back, however briefly.
It's also kind of showing that, like, I mean, Moira's mindset there, because in 410, I don't think she's going to be super happy that June did that.
No, I can't wait to find out.
No, she fought it. She fights a different way. Like even before Gilead, she was protesting and, being vocal. And she went back to who she was, really, because now she's protesting, being vocal. And
my note was Hannah not getting out on Angel's flight is entirely June's fault from this episode. Like she would have been nearby. She had a Martha that was willing. If she'd just been patient and not had to go set eyes on her in a completely unsafe situation, then she could have gotten Hannah out easily in the Angel's flight. So
she just Frances would have just walked her there.
Yeah, exactly. Happily. She wants to leave too.
Right.
But instead, Frances is dead. Her daughter, like, she really fucked up her daughter's life beyond the escape. Like, what Aunt Lydia says in the next episode is entirely true. She's lost the woman, like, that loves her the most, takes care of her, probably protects her from the commander. She's now lost all of her friends that she was giggling with in that school. And she's just fucked up her life so much that I would fully understand if Hannah really hated her mom. Because there's no way they don't tell her, your mom is who got Frances killed,
Oh my gosh. I mean, just the guilt that she probably has. I mean,
but she doesn't apparently, according to what you said, which is insane. How could she blame that on Frances? There's no possible way.
I think in the next episode.
Okay, well, she did as that was happening, but then when Natalie told her that it was her, she probably then started feeling guilty for thinking. So she's kind of going down that guilt spiral like she did with Omar now. So now she's like, oh my, she is. And that's why in the hospital scene, she's like even broken even further. And then the doctor
she says, I'm never going to see my daughter's again.
Right. And then the doctor's like, okay, well, you can't get your daughter. What are you going to do to honor her?
Right.
So, I mean, she was going down that, and then she has a purpose now. So.
Yeah. I wonder at what point the Testaments was written that kind of changed the storyline. It was like while they were filming 3, or
I think it was because it came out. It came out right after season 3 debuted, right? Like not long after.
It changed season 3 because it took out Nick scenes of talking to like Commander McKenzie. So
yes, and we actually had visuals of that. Right. Remember, we had the picture of him. So they obviously had to retcon his character arc, right?
So I'm curious if it changed like around here where they decided, all right, we need a reason.
I do feel like his absence and then the no explanation of it was something's missing.
Yeah. I was going to say on the jail note, I guess it's also Luke's reaction to the crimes. Well, both that and the Sylvia scene. Like Sylvia took it really well. She was really understanding. Emily didn't mind her being there either to hear it. It seems she brought her with her to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Whereas in 408, for June's testimony, when she's about to testify, she asks Luke not to come and he does not respect her wishes and he comes anyway. She doesn't want to, she's not ready to share that with him. And then afterwards, he continues kind of like pushing. He's like, now that I know it all, we can move on. Talk to me. And it's just like, it's a lot. He doesn't give her the space that Sylvia does. Like Sylvia accepts when Emily says afterwards, like, you don't have to bear this alone. And Emily's like closes off and walks. Just very different reaction to everything. And he didn't hear anything. Like think about like what she actually did in Gilead versus what she testified about.
Right.
She just testified about Fred's crimes and not even like all of those really. But obviously if this was his reaction to what she did to her rapist, I don't think that he's going to react real well to hearing the graphic details of her actions in Gilead.
And at the same time, I think June's done a lot of things that we as viewers can see that have been her fault and that she's gotten people killed, even if she hasn't directly murdered them.
Right.
Like, for example, Francis in this episode.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that Luke may not be able to understand the magnitude of what happened here and what kind of an effect Hannah losing Francis has on her. So how much that actually matters. So he may not be able to understand that because he still doesn't fully understand Gilead.
Yeah.
Not even after season 4. So he may not be able to understand what June really did and how bad it was. Yeah. But I think he would definitely not take some of the things she's done very well, or at least not as well as Syl did.
Yeah.
Right. The handmaids are in a comply and die situation too. I mean, they have to kill innocent people. She's killing, they're hanging them. Can you imagine
just through the prosecutions? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
that's what I mean. What does that do to you mentally? That you're sitting there and you know
totally change you.
You're killing innocent people. It's terrible. It's a terrible world.
In 410, when he's like, I'll go to Gilead, I'll go to jail. Like it's just there's jail there. That's what happens when you are guilty.
Like, is there even a Gilead jail? That's a good question. There's not.
Money to just kill
I don't think so. I think they just kill them. There's either a holding cell where they torture
you. A holding cell. There we go. Yeah.
They torture it out of you, and then if they don't get it, then you're on the wall. Yeah.
Right.
So,
right.
A holding cell for torture is what they have.
Right. Holding cell before they get you out and hang you or whatever they're going to do. Stone you. Yeah. I just had one more small thing. When June is scratching her nails on the wall outside of Hannah's school, it's very similar to what she does in, I guess, the next episode. Yeah. She's doing that on the wall and then on the carpet, and it seems to be some kind of a way she's kind of physically letting the pain out. But it's just the same motion in both episodes. I just noticed she started doing that.
Yeah,
she needs to touch or something,
dig something, or like I don't know, have some pain or feeling.
Right.
Or,
feeling, right?
Feel it. Yeah.
Winslow and Fred.
Yeah, what's going on there? So he goes to Jezebel's later for girl, right? There's no men.
It's a really good question. I
guess we don't know, but perhaps there's always young guardians walking around too.
They haven't shown it. It's probably maybe they do it, but much more secretively. I don't know.
Maybe.
You think Fred would have let it go further just for the power?
Maybe.
One way or another, I was expecting and find out more about that storyline, but we don't, right?
Yeah, it would have been interesting if they confirmed that Winslow is bisexual or gay, but it would be interesting to see how someone in his position actually does it in Gilead.
Yeah.
Like, aside from just not doing it at all. But obviously, he's in a very high position in the Gilead society, so he may have opportunities
If he's made these out, like these very blatant advances on Fred, like he must have done it on other commanders and such. I like that they included it because they haven't. So it's interesting to see a little bit of it, but I would like to know more about the workings of high-ranking gay men in Gilead.
That would be interesting.
Another thing in this episode that is sort of related to this is how the wives in DC drooled over the young Guardians.
Yeah.
And I still wonder if maybe some of them have actually cheated on their husbands with the young Guardians.
That seemed like the implication to me.
Yeah.
A whole different world in DC, but it's just somehow it like angers me more that the handmaids are shut down more and the commanders and their wives are living it up more. You know, the dichotomy between the classes is just so fucked up.
So maybe they have more liberties in DC at least.
It seems like the Guardians would be more like
afraid
more victimized in DC than in Boston. The Guardians seem fairly safe, at least in Boston, but that doesn't seem to be the scenario here.
No.
Where they're being lusted after by wives and probably commanders as well.
It's sort of like what Fred used to do with both the first Offred and what he did to June with going to Jezebel's with her and basically raping her outside the ceremonies. I wouldn't say that the Guardians are exactly like the handmaids, of course, but they are in the position of servitude
for
people.
And they have to go along with.
They have to play along. So they don't really have the choice to resist, even if it's a wife, which means it's a woman.
I wish we could see that more of the dynamic with the Guardians, because you do know from episodes that they are not quite at the handmaid levels, but that they have to perform when asked. I mean, look at even Nick. You need to sleep with the handmaid to get her pregnant. I mean, that's a forced rape of him, right? Exactly. Of both of them. So it's like, I wonder, because, you know, I don't know what episode it is, but when she's escaping on the plane, how the Guardian's there. Obviously something terrible was happening that he wanted to risk his life to escape. So they're abused too. I mean, they're comply or die situation. They're men, so they're obviously treated better, but they're still slaves, kind of, you know? Yeah, slaves of Gilead.
And I'd like to know where they live.
Gosh, it would be so interesting to see, like, more.
We'll get some in season 5.
I guess that is a wrap on our analysis of season 3, episode 7 of The Handmaid's Tale. Come back on Thursday to discuss season 3, episode 8. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
You know, I think about us, the 3 of us, what we could be. I think about it all the time.
Please. It's terrible.
No, it's not. I know June. She's my friend. I care about her. How's your day going? You look pretty.
Thanks. I wore it just for you. Our father's a driver named Nick. He helped me to survive. Yes, you can, because I can't lose you.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
What about you? Your girlfriend is a badass.